So first, I welcome all of you heartily, and I'm really happy to be here with you and share about the story, the energy, and the magic of pyramids, especially about the Great Pyramid in Giza, the Sphinx, and the 4 cycle calendars, as they showing us the time of turning, which leads to the 7 steps of insights. But let's start with the definition what a pyramid is based on the sacred geometry. The fundamentals of creation would not be complete without the inclusion of sacred geometry, which also includes mathematics and numbers. So the 5 platonic solids together form the basis from which the structures of sacred geometry and creation are derived. Each and every shape in our material worlds and creation consists of one or a combination of those solids. They are called platonic solids because they are associated with the Greek philosopher Plato. So in one of his last works, the book Timaeus, he described universal cosmology and being based on geometrical structures which are connected to each other. So thought not as substantially proven by Plato, it was well known before that these 5 geometrical solids were the building blocks of the universe. So the octahedron is the divine form that the pyramids belong to. You see 2 pyramids with unified base. So there are different theories saying also that the energetical form of a pyramid is always the octahedron. And there are also like 4 criteria for a pyramid. So the first is the geometrically equal 4 base lengths and sides. They have to be built by humans from cut stone blocks, and chambers and corridors inside the pyramid. And finally, alignment to the 4 cardinal points, and most of them have usually also an astronomical alignment. So these criteria apply to all pyramids in Egypt, Central America, and China. So before we start, let's first look into today's historical view to find out when and how and who built the pyramids. So humankind appeared on this wonderful Mother Earth like hundreds of thousands of years ago. Yet from scientific point of view, the human civilization began with the wall paintings in the caves of Lascaux and Pont d'Arc in France, around 36,000 years ago. But the Lemurian civilization appeared already 40,000 years ago from China over India into the Pacific Ocean. So, according to the official history, the first high cultures, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and the Pharaonic dynasties blossomed around 3000 BC. The Maya, the Inca, and the Chinese dynasties, as also the Indian empires, flourished within this time frame. Before that, all humans were officially only and just hunters and gatherers. So accordingly, our, let's say, cultivated humanity would have begun only 5,000 years ago on different continents. But who were their forefathers and teachers from 40,000 to 3,000 before Christ? We find an astonishing number of references in Greek, Arab, and Old Egyptian sources. Their dating of the high cultures began around 30,000 to 16,000 BC with the Lemurians, who were called god kings or Neter or Neteru at this time. They were followed by the Atlanteans from 15,000 to 8,000 BC, who were called the Horus kings or the Shemsu Hor. Followed by the pre-dynastic kings lines from 7,000 to 3,000 BC, and then started the Pharaonic dynasties in Upper and Lower Egypt. We can best see the 4 legacies, the Lemurian, the Atlantean, the pre-dynastic kings lines, and the Pharaonic dynasties and legacies in Giza, at the edge of Cairo, the capital of Egypt. The 3 megalithic pyramids are the last existing one of the 7 wonders of the world, but these huge pyramids were never tombs. No funerary goods, inscriptions, or historical manuscripts were ever found that proved so. They were not built in 2500 BC by the 3 pharaohs Khephren, Cheops, and Mykerinos within around 100 years, who never claimed even to be the builders. And this is a very interesting point. As you know, and everybody who has been in Egypt and in the Valley of the Kings and Queens, they know that in these tombs, every wall and even the ceiling is full with hieroglyphs telling the story and what the pharaohs have reached in their lifetime. You can read how many houses and people they had, how many women, and what the big results they made in their reignship. But these 3 pharaohs, Cheops, Mykerinos, and Khephren, you find not one mentioning of building the pyramids. There is just one small section in a historical part of Cheops where he says that he was of protecting the house of Horus and Isis. This was his name for the Great Pyramid, and that he built a small temple beside this for his wife. Just one human did so. Thoth himself does not make it easy for Egyptologists and provokes everyone with a statement that seems presumptuous to many in the book The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. He says, "I built the Great Pyramid according to the model of the Earth Power Pyramid, which burns forever so that it too may survive the ages. In it, I incorporated my knowledge of the magical sciences so that it may still exist when I return from Amenti in the time of turning." Thoth became the master of teachings and scriptures and was later worshipped as a deity in the pharaonic dynasties. So these pyramids would be therefore, like the Sphinx, built around 11,000 BC by the Atlanteans and over 13,000 years old, as documented in my book Giza Legacy with 3 different lines of scientific evidence. So for speaking for myself, in 1999, I finally wanted to go to Giza after I visited several other sacred sites around the world, and I planned the first journey. So in May 2000, I stood the first time in front of the pyramids and the Sphinx, and I was so impressed, so overwhelmed and touched by their majestic beauty. So the pyramids in Giza are an almost inhuman masterpiece in many respects. Nowhere else has so much building material been collected. About 8 million blocks were calculated for the pyramids and temples, which the 3 pharaohs are said have used to be built in about 100 years. So the average weight of a building block of the Great Pyramid of 2.5 tons is still a world record. The blocks are cut so precisely and joined together that not even a razor blade fits between them. I really could feel the immense energies that have been at work there and still prevail. What is the meaning of this place? What did this structure stand for? I did not yet know. So my explorations began in Egypt, and my yet 26 journeys to Giza really went far behind mere scientific undertakings to the pyramids. For me, they also became a spiritual and consciousness adventures, as you will see later when we will dive into the pyramid calendar. So in addition to the structural dimension and precision, there are further almost unbelievable facts about the placement and orientation of the Great Pyramid. Giza is located on one of the 12 intersection points of the 5 ley line waves that surround the Water Earth and form the energetic ley grid. Here you can see the two-dimensional view and the main line crossing to Giza in the center of the picture. And here you get a three-dimensional view, like from the Pacific Ocean in the center, where the old civilization of Mu or Lemuria were located. And you can see Giza on the top on the left side there as the crossing point. Giza is also called the crown chakra of Mother Earth's energetic grid, and this fits also with many teachings of different indigenous First Nations around the world. And there is even a stellar alignment. So the three megalithic pyramids in Giza in Egypt are aligned to the Orion belt. And what was very special for me to discover was that the three main pyramids in Xi'an in China are also aligned with the Orion belt. So just by the way, Xi'an with the Valley of the Emperors is a real special place. There are approximately 100 pyramids just in one huge valley. So to compare, in whole Egypt, we find yet also approximately 100 pyramids. And to close these stellar alignments, the three pyramids in Teotihuacan in Mexico are also aligned to the Orion belt. So let's come back to Earth and to Giza in Egypt. As the Great Pyramid is situated at the 30th parallel and the 30th length degree above the equator, this pyramid is located equally distant from the center of the Earth as it's from the North Pole. So the position of the Great Pyramid is thus a geodetic fixed point, which could only have been calculated by someone who knew that the Earth to be a sphere and who had the measurements of both the land masses and the oceans. The north side of the Great Pyramid is perfectly aligned to the North Pole and the eternal celestial pole, respectively. The meridian upon which the Cheops Pyramid stands leads through more continents than all others. And it is said that this north-south line cuts the global exactly in the global land masses exactly in half. So now we will look into the most striking aspects of the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx and the chambers. But before we go into the Great Pyramid, I would like to give space for questions if they are like on the first part of these presentations about where do we come from and our history.
Hi, Rico. No questions so far, but let me double check in the chat. I don't see any questions. Does anyone have any questions that you want to put into the Q&A right now for Rico? I think we can move forward, and then please do feel free to put questions in the chat and in the Q&A. I'm sure there are many questions bubbling up for everyone.
So the Great Pyramid is the largest of the three megalithic pyramids, and it was originally about 480 feet high. This pyramid is perfectly aligned to the cardinal points, and the deviations in the Great Pyramid are just hundredths of a degree, at the most just 3 arc seconds. The 4 sides at the base of the pyramid are particularly the same length, with 755 to 756 feet long. And the pyramid also stands absolutely level with a maximum of 0.6 inch height difference at its base. And such amazing precision goes far beyond the modern construction standards that we have today. And there remain 201 intact stone layers with an average height of 2.3 feet each. And the remains of the 202nd and 203rd level lie on top of the square summit platform, which is 33 feet across either direction. And the upper 31 feet of the pyramid are missing. The base length, including the former casing stones, is 365 Egyptian cubits, which corresponds exactly to the number of the days of a year. Also very special is the fact of P and double P. So the steep 52 degree angle of inclination indicates the incorporation of P. The height of the pyramid of 481 feet has the same ratio to the base with 3023 feet, and thus the radius of a circle to its circumference. So this means 2 times P. The pyramid is thus also a projection of the northern half of the globe, with the apex at the North Pole and the circumference at the base is the equator. This makes the ratio of the circumference to height precisely 2p. And the enigmatic pyramid structure also resounds with many other interesting numerical combinations. And here in the aerial view, you can see the grid, the ley line grid from the North Pole, and how on this center it's appearing the lotus flower with like 4 or 5 leaves. And this, however, is hardly mentioned in textbooks, and they are not accepting this incredible fact of P and double P, or are branded as made-up number games and random results, which were neither intended nor recognized by the builders. If it were merely a matter of the number P, then such explanations may be convincing. But however, the pyramids have many other amazing mathematical particularities. Among them, the number P, the golden mean of ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, and this is all mirrored in the dimension of the king's chamber, with a height of 19 feet, which perfectly matches half the length of the diagonals on the floor with 38.2 feet. So we find here in these chambers again P and double P. And despite all these nearly unbelievable findings and masterly construction techniques, the true artistry lies within the body of the pyramid, in the chambers and the corridors, which were not found until the 9th century, because the original entrance had been walled up and encased. And now we enter together the Great Pyramid. First with the 3 official chambers. The so-called System Chamber that was originally called Chamber of the Way. The so-called Queen's Chamber, which was originally called Chamber of the Mother. And the so-called King's Chamber that was originally called Chamber of the Father. And some see the Great Gallery as the 4th chamber, as it is the hugest chamber. The chambers to which the descending corridor leads is actually situated 105 feet in the bedrock beneath the pyramid, and is 125 feet deep within the rocky core. It measures 46 feet long by 27 feet wide and is 88 feet high. The chamber is precisely aligned to the north-south and east-west axis and has 2 completely different sides. So the eastern side is flat, and in the floor there is an 11 feet deep shaft, which originally 5 feet deep upon discovery and was later dug 6 to 7 feet deeper. So since it looks like a cistern, it was given this name. In the western half of the chamber, a narrow corridor gradually ascends to the back wall. Rocky outcroppings really jut out, some nearly reaching up to the finely chiseled ceiling. There is also a horizontal corridor with smooth walls leading from the southern wall of the chamber, which was hewn from the bedrock. So this effort would not have been made for a mere abandoned chamber project. So the entire structure seems more to have been built according to the original plan for it. And in the ancient initiation path was needed to lie in there, with the head at the end receiving the so-called black light spiral into your third eye, and in the king's chamber, the white light spiral, and combining them finally in the queen's chamber. So this system chamber is the only one that lies beneath the ground level, upon which the pyramid itself stands. The passage to this chamber is the only one that lies beneath the ground. All the other chambers, in contrast to the other two pyramids, are within the body of the pyramid itself. At the spot where the ascending corridor leads into the Great Gallery, there is also a corridor that continues on horizontally, and it leads to what has been traditionally called the Queen's Chamber, which lays 125 feet further on. It too has a precise north, south, and east-west orientation, and this chamber is nearly square with 19 to 17 feet, and has a gabled roof consisting of limestone slabs leaning against one another. Because the finishing is relatively rough, the official opinion is again that this chamber was abandoned before completed too. So leading from the north and south walls are 10 inches high and a 9-inch wide shaft. Both were hidden behind a 5-inch thick covering, where it was first discovered in 1872. When the German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink caused an uproar 121 years later when he used a camera robot to explore the southern shaft and found that it was 213 feet long, far longer than previously assumed. However, the main sensation was that the robot discovered a seal with the copper handles and the end of the shaft. And since 1993, it has been known that these shafts rise to a level above the king's chamber, and if the queen's chamber had been abandoned because the burial chamber was built on a higher level, then the two shafts certainly would not have been built and would make no sense. And finally, in this chamber, there is a niche in the eastern wall that grows incrementally narrower towards the top. And it was originally 3.5 feet deep, but Arabian grave robbers enlarged it in hopes of finding another chamber behind it. At the end of the Great Gallery, there is a 3 feet high ledge behind, which is a nearly 28 feet long corridor. The pink granite lined chamber, which is precisely oriented to west, is 30 feet long, 17 feet wide, and 19 feet high. 15 massive blocks form the floor, and exactly 100 blocks make up the walls. 9 giant granite blocks, each weighing 40 to 50 tons, lie across the top of the side walls to form the ceiling. The hollow space within it matches exactly the half of the total volume. The sarcophagus that stands in the chamber was hewn from a single piece of red granite. And also, just as a note in between, the red granite is harder than iron. So all these parts that are made of red granite is still not cleared how they could be worked on them, because as we all know, the official theory is still that all this was built by stone hammers and copper chisels. It also remains a mystery just how the sarcophagus, which is larger than the access corridors, was brought to its final resting place. It is said that it was placed inside the room before it was complete, and that the pyramid was then built around this chamber. But why did the builders use their sophisticated construction skills to build such narrow corridors, and at the same time the Great Gallery, which is over 26 feet tall? But there are more additional chambers in the Great Pyramid. Until the 1990s, everyone thought that the Great Pyramid contained just the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, the Great Gallery, the Grotto, which also leads to the System Chamber. But only in the last 30 years, since 1987, the existence of at least 4 additional chambers has been proven, using the latest technology, particularly by Japanese scientists from the Waseda University under the leadership of Professor Yoshimura, and the French researchers headed by Gilles Dormion. And also, Professor J.J. Hurtek has detected a newer one, the so-called Chamber of the Sun. That's why we talk about 12 chambers so far. So you can read and compare also all the theories on the construction of the Great Pyramid in my book or website, Giza Legacy. And here I would like just to briefly summarize my conclusion after 30 years of research, which also agrees with old sources and newest knowledge from quantum physics. So the Lemurians and Atlanteans were technical masters in architecture and possessed great knowledge about the 5 elements, their connections, and the structure of material creation. That's what we call today alchemy. They were able to change the specific density and weight of matter through vibration and sound. So the blocks of stones were transformed in a, let's say, soft and cuttable state, such as clay, for example, and then restored to their original density and vibration, which explains the precision of the processing. And then the specific weight was reduced to a fraction in order to shift and perfectly place the blocks through levitation, and after that they were retransformed in their original vibration. So the pyramids, and this is very important for me to share, they were built by the Atlanteans, that I call also our older sisters and brothers, dedicated to the deity and the transmission of light and vibration for all life on Earth. This is a place of consciousness. And this means also that the pyramids were not built by the so-called aliens. And this is important to know and to differentiate. So before we end with the part of the Great Pyramid and continue with the Sphinx, so now let's continue with the Sphinx and its meaning, as it is still the largest statue in the world and it guards the entrance. So on the eastern side of the Giza plateau, there was originally a rock cliff that was 33 feet high. From it was carved a lion figure with a human head. It measures a total of 203 feet long. The front parts alone are nearly 50 feet long, and the head is nearly 66 feet tall. To form the body, a trench was cut out of the surrounding rock, the measuring of 22 feet deep and 18 feet wide. And after the discovery of the Sphinx and the Valley Temple, it became clear that the limestone blocks of these structures, as were those used to build the mortuary temple in front of the pyramid of Khafre. So by Egyptologists, the building of the Sphinx is attributed to Pharaoh Khafre, and the proof that they offered for this is based on the diorite statue of a seated Khafre found in the Valley Temple. And cited as further evidence is an inscription on the dream stela found in the front of the Sphinx, which was like erected by Thutmose IV, who lived over 1,000 years after Khafre. So the name Khafre is inscribed on the stela, although the context in which is used is not longer like the decipherable. And the head of the Sphinx, in all probability, the present Sphinx head is not the original, because it is proportionally far too small in relation to the body. So therefore, one can assume that the original head of the Sphinx was well worn after a long period of rain, and the new face was like chiseled out of the remaining rock, with a narrow beard, the nameless headdress, and Uraeus cobra on its forehead. So the broken off beard was found near the Sphinx, and it's today found in the British Museum in London, and joined by the nose, which was shot off by Turkish cannonballs by the Mamelukes. So the typical Egyptian kingly attributes, like the long narrow beard, the cobra, the nameless headdress, do indicate that a pharaoh of the later periods redesigned the head of the Sphinx. And this also fits that the Sphinx is much older than 4,500 years in the living time of Pharaoh Khafre. And the body of the Sphinx is extensively weathered and has been restored multiple times through the millennia. Egyptologists attribute this erosion to wind, although the Sphinx stands in a trench and was buried in sand for more than 4,500 years to have passed the days of Khafre. So if the desert wind truly did cause the erosion, then the sandstone structures from the 4th dynasty should have at least shown signs of the same degree of weathering, which simply is not the case. So the vertical 3 to 6 feet deep grooves in the trench walls seems to indicate massive water flows, which must have arisen from powerful and plentiful rainstorms, which were last experienced in Egypt over 10,000 years ago during the so-called long and big rains. So the traces of water erosions on the Sphinx were first noticed by the French mathematician and symbol researcher Roger A. Schwaller de Lubitsch, which carried out extensive research in Egypt in the 1940s. And 30 years later, the American Egypt researcher John Anthony West truly analyzed the observation of his French predecessor in his 1979 book, Serpent in the Sky. And since the official Egyptology categorically denied the existence of water erosion, in 1989, West turned to geology professor Robert Schoch of the University of Boston, a noted specialist for erosion profiles. And despite having grave doubts in the water erosion hypothesis, Schoch went to Egypt in 1992, and the following year, firm in his conviction that the age of the Sphinx had long been incontrovertibly determined. And although we could only observe the Sphinx from the visitor's platform, it was immediately clear to Dr. Schoch that the sculpture showed traces of water erosion. To make a scientifically founded assessment, however, the stone itself needed to be examined. And undertaking which the Egyptian Antiquities Administration approved upon the recommendation of the University of Boston. So John West put together a really high-carat team that included Professor Schoch, the geophysicist, also Dr. Thomas Dobecki of Houston, 2 other geologists, an architect, a photographer, and the filmmaker Boris Said. And when the team presented the results in 1992 at the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America, many geologists were really confronted with the scientific proof, which showed to their amazement that after 200 years of research, water erosion caused by precipitation had been detected on the Sphinx. So in stark contrast to this reaction was the vehemence with which the Egyptologists disputed and continued to dispute these findings and proofs, which essentially prove that the Sphinx must have been in existence during the great rainfalls around 10,000 BC. And there are many chambers in and around the Sphinx. It's officially stated by Egyptology that there are no underground structures or complexes in Giza and Egypt except for tombs. This remained the official line despite the discovery and proof of the existence of subterranean complexes, which certainly are not tombs, and some of which are also found outside Giza. There are also 2- and 3-story structures cut from the stone in the system of chambers beneath the Mykerinos pyramid, and especially the Osiris complex, or so-called Osiris shaft, and the chambers beneath the Sphinx themselves. This illustration is showing cross-sections of the Sphinx from above, containing all known, newly discovered, and well as some chambers and passages, the existence of which has been scientifically proven, but for which official acknowledgement has yet not been given. So, they are officially proven 8 chambers and 4 corridors or shafts, as you can see in this aerial view. And beneath the great lion man statue lie 2 chambers, the existence of which is largely kept secret by Egyptologists. Although they have been scientifically proven also several times since the 90s. And in 1970 and 78, in 1992 and 93, it was also published about it. So from the first smaller chamber, a corridor leads at a very steep angle further down below. And there is found the second large chamber, which was empty. From this point, 3 passageways continue on, only one of which leads beneath the ground of the pyramid districts. So we cannot say with certainty where the other 2 corridors lead. The one probably goes to the Great Pyramid. So this route through these 2 chambers is one of what the apparently 3 different entrances to the underground complex, and not, as it's often speculated, that this chamber under the Sphinx is the so-called Hall of Records itself, because this 2 lies in the general area beneath the Sphinx, but much farther down and even below the underground city. So one of the 3 corridors beneath the Sphinx is very long, and which curves twice at a very exact angle before arriving at the gate. And this leads to a large and very long chamber, which lies deep below the surface and hides, from our point of view and research, the legacy in the form of stored artifacts of a race of people who existed long before our reckoning of time. And these are the objects that interest group have attempted to find for many years. And however, the Hall of Records is well protected and it's not easy to reach and access it. So this hall is really huge, and every other chamber is like a small closet in comparison. And it's shaped as a long rectangle in the typical megalithic construction style, and it's also built in red granite. So is there a question or questions, but short ones, about the Sphinx before we go in the final part about the time of turning?
There is one question, and I spoke earlier, we have another 15 minutes for your presentation in total. So that's good news. Are there photos of the chambers under the Sphinx?
Yes, I have some just from the first and second chamber, not further.
Okay, very interesting. And are those available anywhere for people?
No, not yet.
To look at? Okay. Awesome. Okay, so the time of turning. Let's get into it.
Okay, because it's really amazing. As it's interesting that when I go shortly back related to the so-called Hall of Record, the legends and also the readings of Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, says that the Atlantean legacy will be found in the time of turning. So it has a double meaning, or even triple one. As we are now living in this time of turning, really right now, but what does it really mean? Because for the last part, now I would like to take you on a short spiritual journey that unites also this old and the new knowledge. And it's about the 4 cycle calendars and this time of turning, which leads to the 7 steps of insight for the new global consciousness. So the time of turning is really a gift for humanity and a gift for you. So to be able to understand this, we need to know what it's based on and how it's calculated. So let us begin with the year 0, the birth years of Jesus Christ, in the zodiac sign of fishes. It was also the start of our calculation of today's time, which underwent several huge steps of development, then turned into the Julian and then into the Gregorian calendar. And through different sources and several corrections and the introduction of the leap year, there is a 6-year deviation, which you can already find in the writings of Jesus' disciples. So it's very interesting that already there was a difference of 6 years. So this means consequently that the year 2018 was accordingly the real 2012, which many prophecies referred to and many people were waiting for. And even the Apocalypse speaks in this context in the time of turning about a battle for the souls in a stormy end of time. But after this, about a change into a beautiful new era in consciousness. So a lot of people know about the Mayan calendar, but there are 4 cycle calendars from different cultures, continents, and times. The astrological, the Mayan, the Vedic, and the Atlantean pyramid calendars. All have an outer circle of 26,000 years, and all say that an era is now ending and a new one is beginning. The 4 ancient cycle calendars are based on the galactic conjunction, which takes place every 26,000 years. And this is modern science. Now we jump on proofs from NASA, because that is a complete orbit of our galaxy around the central sun in the constellation of the Pleiades, and this takes 26,000 years. So it's also corresponding that the distance of the Earth to the center of the Milky Way to the central sun, it's about 26,000 light years. And here you see my illustration of the 3 calendars, like put on top of each other, and we see how perfectly they align. But there is also the even less known pre-Egyptian or Atlantean calendar of cycles, which is encoded in the Great Pyramid of Giza. So one of its cosmic masses, it's the sum of the crossed diagonals with 25,000 926 pyramid inches, and other about 26,000 in their relation to the galactic light pyramid. The edges of the Great Pyramid point exactly to the 4 zodiac signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So, 4 particularly bright stars in the sky lie exactly in these signs of the zodiac, and they are called the guardians of the sky. So these are Regulus in Leo, Aldebaran in Taurus, and Teres in Scorpio, and Fomalhaut. It was previously Aquarius, and today's astronomers assign it to Piscis. So the constellation of these 4 stars always remains the same, and so they can be used as eternal reference points. Therefore, the Great Pyramid can be seen also as an astronomical clock with these 4 stars as reference points. So the pointer can be seen as the line of sight of the Sphinx. After 26,000 years, it looks back at the original constellation of the sky, directly into the sign of Leo. So the Great Pyramids also points to the equinoxes. And this is, for me, an urgent hint for us to keep an eye on the astronomical cycle that has returned to its original position after 26,000 years in orbit. So because it gives us really great opportunities. And again, the prophecy says the legacy will be found and understood in the time of turning. So now the time of turning has come to its turning point between 2017, 18, and 24, which provides us with very special possibilities. And now in 2021, we are exactly in the middle of these 7 years. And as we heard, when a new cycle begins, great changes can happen, which leads to the new insights and a new global consciousness. And look around what's happened on Earth right now and make your own conclusion. So if you accept these insights in the collective consciousness, then the souls will be elevated within the redemption plan. And this is the old and new knowledge that comes together, weaving together, and that I and my partners have the privilege to experience. And I wanted to share with you. And so what does this turning point mean and make possible for each and every one of us? So your own individual, as well as our common collective consciousness and ascension, is now much easier in this time of turning. So dears, use this special time and energy and consciousness. And you can also download, therefore, the booklet for free on evol-forum.ch. And there you get also simple ways about how to integrate this knowledge and consciousness into your daily life. So, how to finish? I've been able to experience really great things that I never thought they would be possible. And I have come to realize that this experience just gains sense in sharing with others. So these are the 3 legacies that were bestowed upon me, and I wish to share with you. And I really hope that this has been an inspiring and hopefully also encouraging journey from the Great Pyramid to the Sphinx, into the time of turning, and into the vision of our own possibilities right now. Because what is very important for me is that we all get this knowledge and that we can make your own conclusion. Because I really love the quote by Buddha saying, "The root of all suffering is not knowing."